Well, the education department there, of course, having huge problems because some taxi associations engaged in violence this morning over routes. That stopped some children from going to school. At the same time, as you know, the Eastern Cape province facing huge problems with overcrowding. Many schools also still having to use pit latrines. Dr Eileen Carter is the provincial manager of the Human Rights Commission in the Eastern Cape. Dr Carter, good afternoon to you. How difficult is the situation in the Eastern Cape for learners? Does the Education Department, do schools have the right infrastructure?
Stephen, and hi to your viewers. Well, I think I can echo the concerns of the MEC to say that infrastructure is definitely one of the biggest main issues in the province. So you would have noticed from the Human Rights Commission's work in this respect that we not only today but throughout the year conduct monitoring activities. And what we can say and what we perhaps also need to echo from the department is that from our monitoring activities today, we picked up that there has been a lot of progress since last year. So in terms of the LTSM, the Learner Teacher Support Material, everything has been, that we did from our sample has been delivered. There was no complaints from the schools in that respect. Similarly, you would recall last year we had a lot of struggles in terms of the school nutrition program, where the funds had yet to be paid over to the schools. So from our sample, we've also not picked up any concerns on that. So it's also necessary for us to point out that that is indeed an improvement. But, Stephen, infrastructure remains the biggest issue. The schools have indicated to us that they simply cannot keep up with the numbers that are approaching them for admission, although they are enrolling. The infrastructure is just not enough. So that would be the sample. But what has our monitoring told us throughout the year? So unfortunately, Stephen, 60% of the schools that we have visited and monitored have indicated infrastructure concerns and that there is simply not enough schools.
So what does this mean then for learners? It means they don't have desks. It means there must be overcrowding in some classrooms.
No, absolutely. Overcrowding, it seems like it has become a reality. But not only that, Stephen, pit latrines, you've indicated previously, in excess of 30% of the schools that we have visited still made use of pit latrines. So overcrowding and the fact that we are struggling sometimes to cater to the numbers, we need to look at very closely. But then we need to go back and see how are we going to address this. And as the NEC pointed out, unfortunately, it's very resource intensive. And do we indeed have the money? Does the fiscus have enough money for us to cater to the infrastructure need of the Eastern Cape? It's a question we certainly need to answer.
I mean, we've seen, along with other provinces, that the education budget there has been cut by the National Treasury. This is going to make all of the problems much worse. It's certainly going to make them last for a much longer time.
So ours, again, would be to argue from the constitutional rights perspective. What does Section 28 of the Constitution tell us? It's the best interest of children. What does Section 29 of the Constitution tell us? It tells us that children have a right to basic education and that those rights do not come with an internal limitation clause, which says it's basically connected to available resources and progressive realization. So it speaks to the immediate realizability of the rights of these kids. So when we do engage with municipalities, departments, the provinces, what we do from the Human Rights Commission's perspective is we speak to human rights budgeting. Can we cater for the rights, the human rights of people first, before we look to other things which may, in essence, be more prone to be realizable progressively?
At the beginning of 2018, Cyril Ramaphosa became the president of South Africa, and one of the first promises he made would be that they would government would eradicate pit toilets, in particularly the Eastern Cape, also Limpopo, at schools. And yet there seems to be very little progress there. And I realize it's difficult, I realize it's expensive, but surely, after all this time, a country with what we have should be able to do this.
I would definitely agree with you, Stephen, but if we look at the reality and where we have come from, although it is 30 years, some of these rural provinces had a backlog that is so tremendous that the other provinces may not have faced. So in terms of the Eastern Cape, there's progress that is being made. But unfortunately, as I've indicated, in terms of our own sample throughout the year, which we can collect live data, in excess of 30% of the schools that we visited still make use of pit latrines. So it is something that is clearly not being done quick enough, and that the muscle needs to be shown in this respect. And from our national office, we've also engaged with the national department to say that these matters may in fact be prone or be ready and ripe to go towards litigation, because of course we are speaking about this since 2018 and even before that, and we don't need to echo the Maipokumape matter for us to know how urgent and how very dire the situation can be.
Dr. Eileen Carter, thank you, Provincial Manager for the South African Human Rights Commission in the Eastern Cape.